Hmm? Is it good? Yeah. What you can endure. In my deep swimming dreams, my mother tells me I can't come home. Not for the things I have done, but for the things I haven't. There's a story she tells me about my grandfather, Fox, leaving her at a hunting stand miles away from the homestead, alone in the dark when she was 8. No lantern or light in late September. Colleen, you're the oldest, he says. Find your way. She has a rifle. Behind every tree, another shadow, or a bear. The woods so thick, no stars to follow. If anyone tells you to cut your hair, she says, it means they destroy beautiful things. Her father cut her hair. For years, hacked above the shoulders with the bluntness of practicality. His jagged cuts marked his return from Korea, from working on the slope of Prudhoe Bay. She never wore her hair short when she had a choice. She let it grow down her back, black and straight, or in a braid. She makes me feel the top point of her skull where there is a dent the size of a poker chip. You have it too. Your brother doesn't. I have this mark, and you have this mark, and we were once whales. When I dream about my mother, I dream of whales. She says she didn't love me when I was born. It took time. She needed to know I would live, survive, prove to her I was strong enough. I was 4 years old before she knew. She had fallen asleep on the couch after putting me down for a nap. I crawled out of the bed and found her only tube of red lipstick and painted my naked body a toddling flame and rolled across her white rabbit fur rug over and over again. Rolled across the walls, her bed sheets. A little warrior, she says. A goddamn mess of a comet. God is more of a whale than a man, she says. Here, the blood washes up on the shore and melts the ice. My bare feet are tinged and lapped with red. The cold snow, the blood warm and pooling from the whale's belly. They have stripped the skin and a layer of fat with chainsaws. A whale out of the ocean is a mountain, a horizon, a different bend of sky. Did you wash your hair? She says. It's as slick as cod liver oil, which is the worst thing. A spoonful she had to choke down either before or after a dinner of rabbit stew or moose chili. Once, she found a bottle of her father's cod liver capsules hidden in a cabinet, Fox's secret stash for himself. He didn't want to down a spoonful of the god-awful tasting stuff, but he made us kids do it. I wash my hair, I say. I don't believe you, she says, but she braids it anyways. Her braids are never straight or neat. They are frayed and wild, and I don't dare undo them. We are crossing Chinitnut Bay on a fishing boat. Cousins and me huddle in the cabin and wait for the Coast Guard to pass. We have too many people on the boat. Then there is shouting. Come up! Come up! A whale. We scramble to the deck. A humpback shoots out of the water, twisting in the air, white fins raised to the sky, and backs slamming into the water. My uncles are hollering and spilling their beer on the crowd of us. Another whale breaches, leaps up from under the boat, belly and arm's length from the rail. We all shrink back, me holding onto the hood of my mother's jacket. But she has a hand out, reaching and then brushing the white belly of the falling whale. the splash soaking her. My uncles net the floating bottles they threw overboard in their celebration. Touch your eye, she says. That's what it feels like. There's a story about how I was almost never to be. My mother goes fishing for reds with her brothers, who are brand new commercials in Cook Inlet. Everyone is lined out along the rift where the water is discolored, boats stacked 300 yards apart, each with 900 yards of net out for the catch. They're in an aluminum boat, and the drunk captain next to them, Sarge, is driving an old wooden boat. Their boat is cobbing with the 6-foot rollers, and then the winds change. The boats turn, and all the nets tangle together, and they're tangled up with Sarge. They tie up to him so they can separate the nets, and Sarge is still drinking, so he's no help. And they can't find a good enough tie-up, and their aluminum boats keep banging into Sarge's old wooden rig. Then the tie breaks and tears a cleat off of Sarge's boat, and he says to hell with it, and throws his boat into drive and sucks his own net and lead line into the prop and stalls out in the middle of the ocean. The seas roughen up with bigger and bigger swells until they're 20 feet high, and their boat is slamming down into the troughs, and they finally tied Sarge's dead-as-bricks boat to theirs. Ben sends my mother to the front to hang the big orange buoys off the side for bumpers. On the way back, she's holding onto the rail with her left hand in front of Ben's, who's driving in the cabin, and sees his face scare as the boat pitches wild and the deck drops out from underneath her. She hangs onto the rail and dangles in the water, and the next wave pitches, and suddenly she's back on the deck of the boat, like she never left, and Ben has that "you can't be alive" look on his face. She's soaked through, but she helps untangle the mess, and they crank in the net full of fish and pallets and other drift because they have to move out of the storm. After a few hours, they anchor up and pick up the nets. Over 700 reds with their guts falling out of their mouths, squeezed from the pressure of being rolled up. Her brothers can't handle the sight and the long lobbing rolls of the water and take turns puking over the side of the boat, and she taunts them while she eats a moose liver sandwich. This whole day, she says, is what we call a clusterfuck. It is one of her favorite words. I am the sinking kind. She holds me up so I float, one hand under my neck, another under my back, and I'm weightless and gliding, the water tickling my ears, my hair swirling. She swims laps around Goose Lake, and I wait for her, chest deep in the water, feet patting the marshy bottom. On the shore, I see them first on my legs, ugly and black and bloated. Leeches. And I scream. She looks down at me, calm, and says, "What would you do if I wasn't here?" People are staring, and a man rushes over to help, and she waves him away. She says she will do the first one and shows me. Take the nail of your thumb and slide it under this end. I don't want to touch the leeches. I want my father. I kick her as hard as I can. She picks me up and drags me back to the truck, a hand over my mouth. On the drive, I bury my face in my towel and wail. "Hey," she says, "look at me." But I don't. She turns on the radio. I'm going to run away, I decide. I hate her, and I'm going to run away, and if I do and I die, then she'll be sorry. She turns off the radio. One of the leeches just fell off. When they're full, that's what they do. Here, The eye of a whale is small for what a whale is. A whale is small for what the world is. I cut out the eye of the whale and hold it in my hand. There is an ocean inside of it, deep and black and stormy. You know, my father says, she's bluffing half the time. Half the time. I can't tell, I say. Her way of saying hello sounds like yellow. I don't know where this is from, but my uncles and aunts say it too. I think of Arctic poppies, their bright papery bowls sprouting from thin stems and rooted in gravel beds, the rocks of mountains, the tundra. She makes a trip to Denali every summer to see them, little suns scattered in an endless stretch of green. They are the same color as alpenglow, she says. I am 12 and mad at her for dragging me along. No, they're not, I say, and this is the last time she takes me with her. The first time in an airplane, my mother is white-knuckled after takeoff. She points at the blue in the window. Ocean, she says. That's the sky, I say. No, we're sitting in the belly of a whale, she says. We're waiting to be born. How, I say. I'll tell you. When I was young, she said I was a burrower, a little vole. And I still have this habit of closeness, even though she moves away. And once, while my father is on a hunting trip, I curl up in her bed and she turns to me and says, I can't breathe. Why are you always so close to me? I think now she meant this as an honest question, but what I heard was, get the hell away from me. And I ran into my own room. 6 brothers and sisters and married at 17. I don't think she's ever had her own bedroom or bed. It's all an act, my father says, this tough-as-nails bullshit she does. I knew this, and I know this, and I forget this. Then I remember it again. I never undid the crooked braids she wove into my hair, or complained about her less than gentle ways with a brush. For a few minutes, untangling my freshly washed hair, she was nearest to how I wanted her to be. I'm glad I lived through a lot of shit so you'll have stories to tell, she says. Because what the hell are you going to tell your own kids? How I survived you, I think. But she'd say I was being dramatic, that when she was growing up, she was so poor, she couldn't be dramatic. I'm not going to have kids, I say. It is terrifying, she says. Maybe the most terrifying thing. Here, the ocean is the sky, and the sky is the ocean, and my paddle cuts through the eye of stars. I kayak at night around an island without coves or inlets. I am dragging her in a kayak behind me, and she is dragging a whale that moans a long, droning song. Talk at you later, she says, instead of goodbye. The act catches me every time, not to or with, and her words are a cloud of split shot coming for me. Thick as mosquitoes in July at the evening hilt of sun. My mother says she was bitten so many times growing up that she became immune, and they eventually stopped bothering her. That, and she smokes cigars when she's fishing to keep them away. She doesn't believe me when I say they still sting like wasp. But then a bite above my eyebrow changes her mind as my eye swells shut and my forehead puffs out. She laughs every time she looks at me while we drag for reds in the Kenai. A few months later, she tells me she was a little worried. Any more swelling, and she would have taken me to the hospital. California has made you soft, she says when I visit. And I always think, Alaska has made you cruel. But I never say it. We chop wood for the campfire, and her pile is always twice as big as mine. The logs split clean. But what she doesn't know is that I lag in my upswing. I pretend to tire out because she has so much satisfaction in whistling at my uncles and pointing at her pile and saying, "Would you look at that?" I remember being old enough to be embarrassed and ashamed and throwing my pajamas and my bedding into the tub. I turn on the hot water and pour half a bottle of shampoo over my mess. It is the middle of the night, and she knocks on the locked bathroom door. I tell her I'll be done soon. "Open the door," she says. "Do you know what time it is? You don't have school for another 4 hours. Open the door right now." I do. She looks at the tub and looks at me and smiles. "Piss yourself an ocean," she says. "Who cares? You'll grow out of it someday." It's everywhere in the news, in the papers. Humpback whales near California off the coast, of course, and confused on their migration to Alaska. They are swimming the Sacramento River, a mother and her calf, and are 90 miles inland. The biologists play whale songs on underwater speakers to try and herd them back to the ocean. The problem seems to be all the bridges. They don't like to pass underneath them. My mother cuts out the article and sends it to me with a note that says, "Whales lost in a shitty river in California. And I thought of you." When my parents visit me, I take them to Avila Beach. I teach her to body surf. She doesn't let the waves take her, struggles against their pull. What she does instead is wait for a wave to crest and then dives underneath the break and pops back up in the calm. She laughs. "Take that, you bastards." She floats on her back and rides the rolling tide. I surf a wave and my bathing suit top breaks, the metal clasp in the back. I ask her to hold it and we will walk to our towels. "I can fix this," my mother says. "Wait here." She goes back to our spot, her bag, and brings back a spool of fishing line. She is never without it. There are so many things she has fixed this way: shoes without laces, bucket handles, life jackets, loose baby teeth that needed a pull. She threads line through the 2 sewn loops and binds them together and bites off the end. "A 50-pound test line," she says. "This sure ain't going anywhere." Near the tide pools, my father points to a sea slug that has washed ashore, a purple slab of slick flesh that looks like a discarded liver. "That's the biggest damn leech I've ever seen," my mother says and winks at me. "It's not a leech," I say before I can stop myself. This is as close to an apology as she will ever give me. Here, the bones of the whale are the tall skeleton of a ghost ship after the flesh is cut away. The bones are dry and smooth, and they reach outward, hands reaching out of the ground and towering over me. I lie down and align my body, my small spine, against the spine of the whale. Her canned smoked salmon wins blue ribbons at the fair every year. She won't give her secrets away, not even to her brothers and sisters. She keeps the smoking shed that my father built for her locked, and I am sworn never to tell them. She taught me the trick with the rock salt, the timing, how to cut the strips of salmon, how to hang the strips in the smoke shed, because I'm not going to be around forever, she says. You need to make yourself useful. My first September away, she sends me a box of mason jars filled with her famous smoked salmon. She might as well have sent me rubies. I ration them throughout the year, eat out of the jar with my fingers, the oil running down my chin. I send her the empty jars and oranges and tangerines and cherries from Bakersfield. Then my father calls and tells me not to send oranges. Please, she hates oranges. There's a story about her pissing in the bed growing up and not being allowed to eat dinner and starving and finding the K rations and rotten oranges her father hid in a crawl space. I send her cherries and nectarines and plums the next time and vow never to forget something like that again. Why can't she remember this one thing? My father yells. She never flushes toilets. She was raised with outhouses. I know, he says. I'll build an outhouse in the backyard just for her if this keeps up. He shakes his head. She'd kill me, but I'd be making my point. Do you really want to do that? I say. It would be funny, he says. She wouldn't think so. We would, he says. And sometimes all we can do is laugh and know she's not going to change. The midnight sun sinks behind me, slips below the horizon. Ahead, the alpenglow caps the mountains in a gold sheen. There is no straight line between the two. The light from the downing sun reflects off the horizon, the sky, air and clouds and ice, and appears as a faint mirror of itself on the opposite side. There is no straight line between my mother and I. Between us is a homestead and a hunting stand and acres of thick woods, and she is running and I am running after her. She never finishes her story about being left out in the woods on the hunting stand, my father says. Have you noticed? I have always finished the story for her. I assume she makes it back. She finds her way. Ben told me she was lost, he says, and had given up and thought a bear might be tracking her. She shot into the air. Her mother wrestled a rifle from her father and answered with gunshots to guide her back to the homestead. My mother tells me a story about the first sailors who reached Alaska. They have never seen whales before. 2 humpbacks breach near their boat, heave their bodies toward the sky. The sailors scramble for their guns and shoot at the water and wait for them to reappear. The humpbacks breach again with their strange white markings, are a target for bullets. And how could the sailors have known? The whales meant no harm. They have no teeth. They are only coming up for air.
Melinda. Thank you, Kate. Thank all of you for coming. As you can see, we seem to be out